and welcome to Emma's ESL English. Today I want to talk a little bit about pronunciation. I do have another episode which I've covered a lot of different pronunciation sounds. It's from kind of a long time ago. I will link to that in the description so that you can straight there. That covers a lot of sounds that appear in English that you may struggle with, and you can practice different things. So today I particularly want to focus on the pronunciation of the letter L, and there's a reason for this. When I am teaching my students online, I think what's happened is that most people study English at school, right? Obviously. And when you study English at school, I think they are teaching you some particularly difficult pronunciation letters. And I think you practice that at school. And I think because you're just learning at the beginning, you get used to trying to make those sounds again and again and again while you're going through school. And so you get pretty good at it to the point that now, as an adult, you don't really have trouble with those sounds. And I'm thinking of things like the TH sound. I think a lot of languages don't have the TH sound, the. And so I think a lot of time is spent on doing that. Even in the UK, there are students that I remember from school who used to say th instead of the, and the teachers would always correct them. So TH is considered a difficult sound to make even within the UK, so it's not surprising that your teachers might teach it wherever in the world that you live, right? But there are some other sounds that are either you have the sound or something similar in your own language. So the teachers don't bother to spend as much time on it. It's not so important. So then the problem is you can get to the adult point and you've just been managing this whole time using the sounds that you have from your own language to fill the spaces of the English sounds, which is fine if that's working for you. Great, perfect, keep doing it. Scroll on, don't worry about me. But if you're struggling, let me know in the comments if you have particular sounds that you really struggle with, and I will do videos just on those sounds and we can focus on them and spend more time on them. I don't know what they are because I don't know where you are. So this is one I've particularly noticed with my Asian students, and there's a reason for this. Depending on the language, a lot of times students from Asia use what I call the Chinese R sound. This is in Japanese, in Korean, and in Chinese, and I think it's also in some other languages too, but those are the ones that I most often teach, so I notice it the most. So the Chinese R sound is quite different to the English R sound. The Chinese R sound is really far back in the mouth and the tongue really rolls up quite a bit and it becomes a sound. So sorry, as an English person, my Chinese R sound is horrendous. Please note, this goes both ways. You struggle with R sounds, I struggle with Chinese sounds. Trust me, it's not very easy. And I understand the challenge of trying to master these sounds because my mouth doesn't want to do the Chinese R sound. It's not there. So I get it. I get that what I'm suggesting is not simple. However, so here's the trouble. If you are speaking English on a regular basis, which if you're listening to this, you're either speaking on a regular basis or your English level is fairly high that you can follow everything that I'm saying. So if you're speaking English on a regular basis or you have a higher level of English, you're gonna come across a lot of words that have either two R's, two L's, or an R and an L, more than one sometimes, in the word. And this is where the Chinese R becomes a problem. Because the Chinese R is so far back in your mouth, it makes it much harder for you to pronounce either two R's in a word, two L's in a word, or an R and an L in a word. In English, those sounds are in two different places, so we can switch from one to the other quite easily. But with the Chinese R, it's so far back, it takes a long time to come and go again. So the main reason I would suggest you practice pronouncing the English L sound is to make these words easier for you to pronounce. Literally make it easier for you to get your tongue around these words. However, As I mentioned in the beginning, you probably didn't learn this at school, and your English level has progressed so far now that I guess it's probably quite difficult to implement a new sound now. So first of all, I want you to be patient with yourself. Easier said than done. Please try, because you can't expect yourself to just suddenly be able to do this and to suddenly remember to always do it. I think when we're learning sounds when we're little kids, it's kind of a little bit more fun to make those sounds. And also we're learning the language, right? So every time we say that word, we're practicing that new sound and we get a lot more practice. But when we're older and we're more fluent, we're not actually concentrating the same way on the individual words and sounds like we would when we were younger or beginners. And so it means that we can be saying whatever we're saying, and we've already passed the L sound before we realize it's back there. So part of the challenge is going to be being present enough when you're speaking to remember to use the pronunciation. That's probably the biggest hurdle to this whole thing. Of course, you can practice, you can do repetitions, but a lot of the time, the main challenge is going to be actually awareness, trying to be aware and awake enough to catch it in the moment and practice it in the moment often enough that it becomes second nature. So that's actually your biggest challenge. I think your biggest challenge is unlikely to be the actual pronunciation itself and is much more likely to be, how on earth do I remember to use it? One thing is, if you're struggling to say a word, that might remind you, and then you might decide, oh wait, I've got another pronunciation I can use, and try to practice it in the moment then. Is an idea. So as we said, the Chinese R is quite far back, and the L is really easy. The L is your tongue is going to come behind your teeth here. So if you are finishing a word with an L, that's all you're going to do. You're just going to raise your tongue to behind your teeth, sit behind your teeth, and that's it. You've done it. If it's in the middle of the word, you've got to get your tongue there. But it's not a difficult sound to make. That's the key point here. The L sound is not a difficult sound to make. Anybody can do it. It's just remembering to do it. So I have a list of words here that I want to practice, or rather, you will practice with. Okay, so 2 of these groups are just showing you the difference. The first one is alive and arrive. Alive, so your tongue is coming right up to the front, right? Alive and arrive. Your Chinese R would work with arrive, no problem. The problem is if you want to do arrive and then alive and you use the Chinese R for both, they sound the same. Most of the time, most native speakers at least are listening for the context of your words rather than the individual words that you use. So most of the time, it really doesn't matter that much because we can hear from the context of the word, we would know, are you arriving to something or are you talking about something being alive? That's going to tell us more than the pronunciation itself. However, they are going to sound pretty much the same if you're using the R sound, the Asian R sound. Alive, arrive. The second one, light, right. Same thing, right? Light, tongue is coming quite flat to the roof of my mouth and right behind my teeth here. And right, your Asian R sound will work for right, for sure. So this is the thing that I think, of course you can practice making English R sounds, but I feel like it's really less useful because you have an R sound. It's not the same, it's in a different place. I think it's more difficult, but you probably don't. But it works. It totally works. So this is less about the R sound and more about the L sound. That's what makes the difference. Being able to include the L sound when you need to is very helpful. It's not so necessary to replace your R sound because they sound very, very similar. Even though they're made differently in the mouth, they do sound very, very similar. Okay, so alive, arrive. I'll put all of these words in the description, by the way. Light and right. Now let's try some slightly more complicated words. Calendar, calendar. So if you're doing your Asian R, you're having to do that calendar. So that's tricky. Then you're going from there and back to there again. So calendar, you're coming forward at the front, calendar. Curly, that wouldn't work with a Chinese R sound. There are a few words like this that have an R and an L right after each other. And that is really, really challenging because you're not making the same sound. If you're using the R sound for both of those sounds, it sounds really difficult to make actually, but also we can't really hear what you're saying. So curry doesn't, curry, that's curry. That's curry. That's a different thing entirely. Curry is a totally different thing entirely. So that's the challenge. That's one of the reasons why I think it is worthwhile trying to master the L sound, because I think it can help you be better understood for quite a wide variety of words. And there are so many cases like curry where we have an actual R sound central, and curly where we have two different sounds. Curly, like curly hair, where we have two different sounds there. Another one, relax. Again, I hear a lot of relax. I mean, it's fine. I keep saying this. If it's been working for you this long, it's really up to you whether you want to do this or not. So relax. My tongue's coming right far forward at that point. Relax. April. April. That's a little bit easier because we're just ending on the L sound. So we're not really having to make much effort to use it, but our tongue is finishing in that place behind our teeth. April. April. Religious. Religious. This is quite tricky because we're starting at the R, moving forward to the L sound. Religious. Little. Little. There are a lot of words with two L's in beginning and end. Some of them even have an L in the middle as well. These are really, really tricky to get your tongue around. So don't be surprised if you're struggling with it. You are absolutely not alone if you are struggling with L and R sounds in English. Trust me, you are not alone. Okay, little. So we're just really going little. We're going and coming back to that L sound at the front. Rule. Again, the L at the end is quite quiet. I'm not really voicing it out very much, but if you were to try and do it both with the R sound at the back, doesn't really work. Rule. And last one, roller coaster. I like roller coasters. Roller coaster. Roller coaster. So it's quite quickly coming to the front of my mouth. It's not spending a lot of time there before we're going off to the next sound. The way that you're using your L sound can vary dramatically depending on the word. For some words, alive, it's staying there for quite a while. It's a big part of the sound. For some words like little, it's quite a short staccato kind of a sound. And for roller coaster, it's passing through to something else. Anyway, that's a lot. I'll put all of these words in the description. Let me know, again, as I said in the comments, if you have any other sounds that you're struggling with, let me know and I can do a whole video on those sounds. And also in the description will be the other episode that I did a long time ago with all the different sounds in English. If you haven't, please do like and subscribe this video. YouTube is doing weird things with my subscribers. It seems to be like throwing people out of the subscription. So do double check that you are actually subscribed on YouTube if that's where you watch it. I'll see you next time. Bye.